The Vauxhall Corsa is Britain's best-selling car, and it's been in the top 3 for many, many years. This then is the Corsa-e. It's a fully electric version of the car that everybody is familiar with and many people know and love. There's a Vauxhall dealership in every town, and I suspect the reason why this doesn't look radically different, in fact hardly different at all, to the piston car is for familiarity. A lot of people don't want a car that stands out. A lot of people don't want a Honda E or, you know, a car like that that's a little bit wow, an i3 for example. A lot of people want consistency, and that's what this is, and I suspect this is an intentional move by Vauxhall so people can try EV without looking different. Anyway, I've had this car now for 8 weeks, and when you live with the car you get a better idea of what they're like, what you like and what you don't like, and that's what this video is all about. I'm Jonny Smith, welcome to the Late Break Show. The Corsa-e's got a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that is cells made by a company called CATL, 18 modules, and inside each module are 12 pouch cells. That's not necessarily very important. What you need to know is that it charges at a home wall box like mine here in 7.5 hours, and it will rapid charge up to 100 kilowatts, which is really good. Really good. Because in reality, there's a lot of rapid chargers out there that won't charge beyond 100 kilowatts anyway. And all the time I've had the car, I've not had a problem rapid charging it. The other thing I really like about this car is the fact that the charge door here doesn't have a cover on the Type 2 connector, which is what you use day to day. It only has a cover on the CCS, and I don't use the rapid CCS as much. So in other words, once I've opened this door, it's ready to go, and it's got a self-sealing little gasket around it, and that's a lot better than other systems I've found. There's also a little button down there where you can press and delay the charging if you want to. If you've preset it to come on in the middle of the night, I've got economy 7 here, so typically this will come on at 1 in the morning to charge. Oh, and if you're charging at 100 kilowatts, 0 to 80% in half an hour. One aspect of the Corsa-e that I very much rate are these. They call them IntelliLux LED matrix style self-dipping headlights. They're brilliant. The way that they mask out oncoming traffic and stuff. They work quickly, effortlessly, and I think they're better than way more expensive cars that I've driven. So I rate them highly. These are the 17-inch wheels. The car comes as standard on 16s, but the SRI and the Elite, which is top spec like this, have 17. So not a big wheel. And that's possibly why the car has such a good ride. They've got these plastic inserts, which a lot of eco cars have these days, but I don't mind them. I think they're good. They're also really easy to clean. Driving the Corsa-e, really easy to kind of get your head around. And like I said before, I know that that's Vauxhall's intention, and I suspect it'll be the same with the Peugeot E2008. All the controls are pretty much the same as you'd get in a piston car. You've got your start-stop button here, and one of the things that I've found a bit annoying is you do have to press it quite hard and your foot quite hard on the brake for it to register. But you know, once you know that, that's fine. There isn't any adjustable regen on the Corsa, and again, that is because I think it wants to encourage people who have never driven an EV that it feels very similar to an automatic normal car. So you've got B mode, which is the same as I've had in the past with things like the VW e-Golf and the e-Up. You just pull the shifter back from D and it registers B on the dash, and when you come off the throttle you'll get a little bit of binding, but it's very subtle, and you don't get it at all, of course, when it's fully charged. And to that end, actually, I must say, I've had it on charge all night, and I wanted to show you what charge it was at. It was at 133 miles this morning. It was 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, so it had been pretty cold overnight. And I've got to say, the efficiency of the Corsa, the battery efficiency, is not great. It's not the best EV I've driven. It's brutally honest. The range on the car is brutally honest. This has a WLTP of 209 miles, and I've only driven the car in winter, sadly, and the start of spring. I've never seen more than 135 miles when I bring it off charge. But it will do 135 miles. It's quite honest, it's brutally honest. So I admire it for that. It's not blindly optimistic. Now, when they developed the EV for the PSA group, Stellantis now, they had to change the suspension, the calibration of the damping and the spring rates. They've widened the front and rear track for the electric version of the Corsa, and they have changed the torsion bar rear, and the wheelbase is ever so slightly longer, like millimetres longer than the normal car. Corsa-e's boot. The boot space is the same as the piston car, so there's no difference in interior space or boot space as the piston car, because it's been adapted from square one to have engines or EV on the same factory production line. So it's smaller than a Zoe, but it's way bigger than the Fiat 500 electric and the Mini electric and the Honda E, for example. I've found it to be perfectly fine for weekly shopping and taking the kids to school. Underneath, you have got a little bit of space. You haven't got a spare wheel well. You've got like a compressor, and there's a little bit of space for a charging cable. It would be quite nice to have a sort of cubby in the side for your cable. Mine just floats around in the boot, but I'm kind of used to that. Oh, and the 60-40 split here. And just a normal parcel shelf. Cardboard, it's not fancy, but who really cares about parcel shelves these days? Couple of things about the driving position of the Corsa. There's a huge amount of adjustability, way more than I was expecting. You can get the seat incredibly low, and the steering column can come in and out a long way, or you can get the seat really high. So there's a really big range, and it's all manual, which I don't mind. I don't particularly like electric seats. They're just heavier and more of a faff, and that's excellent. One thing I'm not totally convinced about is the keyless entry that the Elite model has. It doesn't seem to be that sensitive to my thumb touch, where you have to put your thumb over the handle to open the car. And the same with the engine start-stop button. You have to have your foot really firmly on the brake, and you have to press it really hard. And I think those two things just seem to be not quite calibrated as well as I'd like. Now, just the same as its brethren, the E208 and probably the C4E, which I haven't quite driven yet, only available as a 5-door. But the back doors, if you look at the shape, this shape here is a problem. It cuts off on the diagonal quite a lot, so it's hard to get into the car. And my kids are about 11 and 9, and the back seat area isn't big enough for them. They don't like the car. In fact, my son likes the car, my daughter doesn't, but anyway. They don't like the amount of space you have back there. They don't think it's sufficient. So what I would say is the Corsa is fine as a passenger car for younger kids, but I think anything over about 9, you're going to struggle for space. You can see also, because the batteries are mostly under the back seat sits a little higher. And it's just a bit awkward. It's a bit compromised, frankly. Because this is the Elite model, it comes with more stuff as standard. So it comes with lane departure assist, and it comes with heated seats, which I've got on, and I'm glad to say they're really easy physical buttons. They're just down there, 3 stages, and the heated steering wheel button is on the steering wheel. It's not in a menu, which I like. And because it's the Elite, it comes with, I think, a 10-inch screen rather than a 7-inch, but I don't think there's any need for it, because it doesn't actually display an awful lot. There's not a lot going on, so why do you need a bigger screen for it? Yeah, it's got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but even the base model has that. Front of the Corsa, I like the front of the Corsa. It does remind me of an Audi A1. The SRI model, which is the middle ranking model, so it goes SE, SRI, Elite. This is the Elite. Front bumper's a bit different. The SRI bumper's probably more attractive, but hey. And the grill's a little bit different. But under here, this is what I want to talk about. This is 136 PS, 134 brake horsepower, or 100 kilowatt front-wheel drive electric motor. It's the same for all of what was the PSA group. Remember, Vauxhall was General Motors, then it got bought out by PSA Group, and the PSA Group has now merged to create Stellantis, which sounds like a band, a dance troupe, but it isn't. So you can look in here and you can see Peugeot, Citroen and DS badges on everything, because it's all the same shared equipment. I've actually found it to have no problems. I've had no warnings flashing up. I've had no rapid charging issues at all. It's just a couple of the buttons need to be pressed a little bit harder than I probably would like, but then it is box fresh. Most owners will probably never really care or look under here. So all you need to know is that that's your screen wash on the left and that's your brake fluid at the back there. And everything else is just electrical and largely maintenance free. And I guess that's the point as well. Remember, being an EV, the maintenance is a lot lower than a piston car. And the week-to-week running costs of an electric Corsa are probably going on for about half of what a piston Corsa is. So although this is more to buy initially, by nearly 10 grand actually, which is a lot of money considering the piston car starts at 16,000, your weekly running costs are a lot lower. You know, a lot of people can criticise this car and just say, oh, you know, it's just a Corsa and it's too expensive for just a Corsa. But I actually think that it's probably the best Corsa that they've done. I've never liked Corsas, and yet the ride and the handling of this is brilliant. And bear in mind, this is a more expensive car because it's EV, but it's also heavier because it's carrying the battery pack. They've managed to hide that, bring the centre of gravity down, of course, calibrate the springs and the dampers and widen the track, and it makes a difference because I think it drives brilliantly. I think the biggest problem of the Corsa of Vauxhall is a lot of people are Luton intolerant. They don't like the badge. Fast forward 6 weeks from the Corsa and I've been living with this, the Citroen E-C4. Although I always want to call it the C4E, it seems to flow off the tongue better. And you can tell it's the electric one because it's got a small blue E. So what is the Citroen E-C4? Well, this is interesting, and that's why I've started on the side profile, because it is a sort of high-rise hatchback with a coupe roofline that they say is a bit of an SUV. It's not really an SUV, but it's got that higher driving position that people seem to want. And I have to be honest with you, I was a bit dubious about the shape being less practical, but I was wrong. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, I've got the car on charge. What I like about this, the same as the Corsa, is when you open the charging flap door, you don't have a plug for the Type 2 connector. It's just open with this rubber sealing gasket. You can see this flashing light here. It gives you an indication that it's charging. You can press that button to delay the charging as well. It's just simple, but it's useful. I've done a lot of long journeys in this car over the last couple of months since the world's been getting back to normal. It'll do 0 to 80% in half an hour. And that's a massive help. Wall box, it'll go from 0 to 100% in about 7.5 hours. So let's just talk about the looks for a second, the side profile. Like I said, you've got this strange beetle back, almost a coupe. A floating spoiler, because that's the rear window. These haunches which kick up over here, and then crazy indentations with plastic cladding, harking back to the C4 Cactus, which I thought was a very cool car. And then you've got this kind of crease here, and then another arch crease. It should be too chaotic, too busy, but it's good, I like it. And you know, the other thing is I haven't got bored of it. I've used it now for 6 weeks, and I still really like it. And I think what it does is it does that brilliant Citroen thing of being a bit out there, design-wise, but at the core, still really practical. And we'll come on to the practicality in a bit, because most of that's inside. Some cars you can go from reverse to D when the car's still rolling very, very slowly. This car, no, not a chance. Not a chance. There's no adjustable regen braking on the E-C4, which is a bit of a shame, but you've got the B button, you press the B button, you come off the throttle and it bites. Just about to tell you how quiet the E-C4 is. And they've decided to chip the road. Brilliant. Driving this car sort of at the back end of spring when it was still a bit cold and moody, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the heated seats with the physical buttons. Obviously you can preheat the car like a lot of EVs, which is great. But you know, the other feature about the E-C4, which is probably the best quality and most responsive of any car I've ever tested, is the heated steering wheel. Look, I know, call me a pansy, but I do like a heated steering wheel in winter. And it's a button down here. So again, a physical button, you can almost forget it. It's not on the steering wheel like the E-Corsa. And you press it, and within a minute, it starts to get properly warm. So it's really quick, warm, better than even Rolls Royces. Honestly, it's that good. The front end of the Citroen E-C4, C4E, E-C4, I really like it. But what's strange is it kind of looks quite aggressive with this angry eyebrow DRL, daytime running lights, and then you've got the LEDs headlights here. So it looks like it's got kind of an angry face, but yet it's a very relaxing, chilled car. So on the way, it's like a really nasty looking guy who opens his mouth and goes, "You all right? Yeah, do you want to come in and have a hug?" Yeah, okay. But I like it. It's Citroen Radical. It's made a really big thing of these two chrome stripes that go into the chevrons. It's got the blue kind of satin finish, blue accents, and that's what makes it different to its piston counterparts. The bit of satin there, the E on the side, the monogram, and a little bit of blue inside on the door handles. But that's really it. Of course, they're all front wheel drive. They're all 136 horsepower, I think 100 kilowatt motor. And that's similar to all the other cars that it shares the platform with. Climb inside the E-C4 and there's a lot to like here. I've lived in this for a while and it feels cosseting, it feels chilled, it feels actually surprisingly luxurious. And that's a surprise to me because the biggest competitor this car has, in my view, is its own stepbrother, the DS3 Crossback E-Tense. Because DS is Citroen's luxury brand that's slightly misunderstood. And it's a lot more expensive than this, but I actually think this is a better car and this is a more comfortable car, which means the DS is sort of rendered pointless. The seats are really, really good. They're slightly retro stitched. They remind me of like a CX or a 70 Citroen when they were properly out there in a good way. There's apparently 3 different densities and types of foam that go into this seat, and it really shows. Long journeys, it's wonderful. Everybody enjoys travelling in this car, unless you want a tense driving experience. If you want intensity, this is not the car for you. If you want kind of chilled, easy listening, cruising comfort, this is a great car for that. So I love the seats, and all Citroen E-C4s have adjustable lumbar support as standard. Remember what I said about that balance between sort of interesting design and practicality? There's loads of practicality inside here. For a start, in the centre console, it is quite a big centre console. There's no flat floor going on here because it's related to the piston version. But they've made a point of making lots of little cubby holes. For example, up here, you've got the rubber pad with wireless phone charging. And when you do place it on there, it has an LED light here to tell you whether the thing's charging or not, which is useful. There's a pair of USBs there. There's a cigarette lighter socket down here. And then in this tray here where I've put my sunglasses, it's got 2 tiers. There's a little hidden trapdoor. And this is all rubberized. So again, you've got 2 levels there, 1 shelf there. And then you come back here, 2 cup holders, good size, with your usual kind of blind to cover it. And then quite a deep armrest there. But the coolest thing, I think, is the fact that you've got this little ledge. I don't know if you can see it so well. And this ledge is perfect for putting a mobile phone in portrait, so that when you've got it hooked up to the Apple CarPlay or the Android Auto, you've got the choice of seeing that screen as well as this screen. And I just really like it. My phone tends to spend quite a lot of time down there because I use the navigation on the phone rather than the one that's installed in the Citroen, just out of habit. There's another thing in here which is very, very cool. You've got actual buttons. Yes, you've got a touchscreen, it's 10-inch, even though it's sort of 8-inch really, because there's columns either side which have constantly got information on that you can't really move around, and the display's basic. But what's cool, physical volume button, brilliant. Physical home button, brilliant. Air conditioning, fan, and temperature, all that kind of stuff, and heated seats, all physical buttons, and they're not cluttered, they're dead simple. I love that about it. Another very cool thing, mostly for children, I suspect. You know, we live in a world now where people are saying that EVs, because you have to wait for them to charge, if you're one of these people that sits in the car to wait for it to charge, you're kind of using your car as more of a mobile office. Well, Citroen's already thought of that. This, on the passenger side, is a pull-out kind of work tray. And in here is a Citroen's own tablet holder. And if you pull that bit out, oh, hang on, if you put the tray back in and pull that out, this clips into there. I got it the wrong way around. I had it the wrong way around. So there, what's cool about this is you can actually use the passenger seat as an office or a children's entertainment centre. With this, again, it's just an interesting little design touch. It's as standard. If you don't want it, you can never use it and it just folds away. And that's besides having a normal glove box underneath there. And I like that. That's cool Citroen. That's interesting Citroen. Having driven the E2008 Peugeot and having lived with the electric Corsa, I can say that because of the shape of the back door of the Corsa and derivatives, it's not really appropriate for a family car. This, on the other hand, is a really good size for a family car. Probably not got quite the legroom and space in the back that a Kia e-Niro has, or something like that, or perhaps a bit smaller than a VW ID3, but it's fine. My kids are 11 and 9. They really like it back here. On the one hand, when you're driving, this pillar here and the fastback with a little tiny window could be a little bit restricting. I've actually found it to be fine. And if I was going to buy one of these, I probably would option it with a panoramic roof. However, for me as a tall man, I've actually got a lot of headroom. It doesn't look like it on the screen because it's a sort of coupe roofline, but there's lots of cutouts in the headlining, and I've got fine headroom. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. I feel like I've been fortunate enough to test this car at a time when life is quite stressful. The world is upside down, and I've found this to be the perfect tonic, even on a long journey, even with efficiency, electric car efficiency that's sort of average really, average at best. It's not the most efficient EV. It certainly can't compete with miles per kilowatt hour on the level of like the Korean cars that I've tested, like the Kias and the Hyundais. But 217 miles WLTP, I've been getting in the real world about 150, 160 in colder weather. But because you can recharge at 100 kilowatts, rapid charge, I don't get anxious. I'm actually quite cool with it. More chippings on the road. And you know, the other thing is when I go on a long journey, I default to sticking it, there we go, into eco mode, which backs off the acceleration and everything, because I've just resigned myself to the fact that this is not a quick car. The E-C4 does 0 to 62 in 9.7 seconds. It tops out at 93 miles an hour. 136 horsepower from that front wheel drive front motor. It's not a fast car. It doesn't profess to be a fast car. The focus of this car is all about this chill out room, this relaxation, this quietness, and I think it's conquered that masterfully. Now the boot of the E-C4 is good. It's not the biggest in its class, 380 litres, and I'll put the literage of some of its competitors up here. But what's cool about it is it's a pretty good width, and it's got a false floor. And in the false floor you can put your charging cables like we've put here. And this will come out and you can drop it back down if you so wish. But having it just here like this allows you to have a flat floor entry. And the DS car, which this is related to, doesn't do that. So again, the DS, which is more expensive, isn't actually as good. You've also got these handy little cubbies at the side, which I regularly use actually. They're quite useful, and there's some elasticated little straps on the left hand side. So I had the Corsa in winter, I had the Citroen in spring. and I've now got arguably the most practical, biggest one out of the group, the E2008, and we're in midsummer. It's supposed to be really hot today, which is why I've put another layer on. So the E2008 is the slightly higher, slightly more family orientated version of the E208, and the E208 is the direct brother to the Corsa that I had. So if you've got a family like I have, you're more likely to consider this because the rear space and the boot space is significantly bigger. The Citroen kind of sits ever so slightly in between the two because the Citroen's got a good interior space, but the boot is a little smaller. But we'll come on to that in a bit. Front design. I really like Peugeot's design language at the moment. I think it's highly recognisable, it's brilliant, and similar to all the other Stellantis offerings, the piston car is based on the same vehicle as the EV, so they're all interchangeable and they look really similar with a few minor changes. The Lion. The Lion on electric Peugeots is called the diachroic Lion. In other words, it's got a bluey, greeny tinge to the 3D badge depending on where you look at it. Wow. And the electric version, this version, I think has body coloured inserts in the grille, whereas the normal one has chrome. Do you remember the old Peugeot slogan, the lion goes from strength to strength? Well, Brian is my lion and he really likes this car. He does genuinely spend a lot of time around this car, so it either smells interesting or maybe he feels like connection with the logo. Either way, there's another logo which I forgot to mention actually. On the side of the wing here, there's a blue E lowercase, and that denotes this is the electric one. But this is my favourite bit here. They've continued the sort of lion theme, and this is the same as the E208 with these sort of 3 DRLs, frosted LED DRLs, and the fang-like moniker here. So these are all on daytime running lights and they're fantastic. Really like this. And all E2008s have LED headlights as standard, and tinted windows, and there's a couple of other things they have as standard. There's quite a lot you get as standard actually. Cruise control, disc brakes all round, eat your heart out ID3, a swathe of airbags, hill start assist, lane keep assist, and the iCockpit, which we'll go into shortly. Okay, so this is the engine bay of the 2008. Brian, not keen on this one. It's the same as all the other Stellantis cars. So it's a 100 kilowatt electric motor, 136 PS, and a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. Again, there's no other options. It is just 50 kilowatt hour. It's a good size, actually. WLTP 206 miles. Real world, I'm going to say around about 160. I honestly think that Peugeot is the best it's been in years. I really like the design language on the outside. I love it inside here. I think the dash is brilliant. This steering wheel that isn't circular is divisive, together with what they call the iCockpit with its sort of 3D depth of digitised gauges. I really like that. My wife can't get comfortable with putting the steering wheel in a position where it doesn't foul this gauges. The head-up display, I guess, kind of helps with that. But I'm all right with it. Maybe it's because I'm tall. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not that bothered about the fact the steering wheel isn't circular. I have history with non-circular steering wheels, aka Austin Allegro. So that is either your bag or not. What is good? The seats. Oh, they've got a name. They've got a funny name, these seats. Let's have a look. The tri-material. You've got imitation leather with Isabella cloth, lime green effect, lime green stitching and blue. Yeah, the blue I think denotes the fact that it's electric, and it's got a cross diamond stitch and this kind of a textured weave. I think it's really good. I think they're comfortable. I've done a lot of long journeys with all 4 of us with the kids. They find it comfortable. The visibility's good. You've got a bit of faux carbon fibre weave with the stitching here. Couple of things that are really useful. This part of the console on the E2008 is excellent. This bit down here is sort of ribbed hard plastic, which you can put usual stuff in. There's a cigarette lighter, and there's a USB-C and a USB. But this bit, when you press this, and this folds, and I've got my sunglasses in here and a bit of litter. But this is wireless charging, which comes on the GT model. And this little ledge is so useful. In fact, I've got my phone in my pocket. This ledge here is rubberized and it's perfect for putting a phone on, either in the portrait or the landscape position. And bear in mind this has Apple CarPlay, which mirrors your phone. The phone being there and connected is just brilliant. I know it's obvious, there's so many modern cars where the phone doesn't really fit anywhere. So I like this part a lot. This cubby hole is incredibly deep, almost as deep as a Welsh mine. I've put a lot of stuff in there and I don't know how I'm going to get it out. It's brilliant though. Electric handbrake only on the electric car. The piston versions have a normal manual wand. Drive mode here, Eco Sport, we'll talk about that when I drive. And the shifter here is just a sort of, it looks a little bit like an ergonomic steam iron. But again, I like it. Lots of piano black. And this sort of piano key switch setup here, my wife can't get on with it. She just doesn't seem to get it. She can't seem to work out how to get back to the menu, which is a little bit tricky. But I like these keys. These ones at the back are physical. Oh, I've put the hazard warnings on accidentally. And the ones behind it are sort of touch sensitive. So there's two types of button, which is unusual, perhaps a little bit French. So because this is a GT, it comes with the heated seats. The other models don't as standard, which I think is a shame because EV, it's really important. And this has a 10-inch screen, whereas the others start with the 7-inch screen. In terms of the screen, I'll talk about that when I'm driving, but there's not a great deal going on there, the same as the Corsa and the Citroen. There's not a lot of complicated menus, say compared to the Kia Soul that I had. So it depends on whether you like that or not. I just tend to drive a car and want connectivity with my phone and a good stereo. Talking of which, this has a really good stereo system. So I have the steering wheel set a little lower than I normally would. Two reasons. One, so I can see the speedo a bit better, but two, because it's a physically smaller wheel and it'll fit under my knees, and that was Peugeot's theory. Not a lot of people are convinced, but it doesn't bother me. The regen braking option is of one. Like the other Stellantis cars, you get the stick, you pull it back after you've put it in D and it changes to B, and B is just a little bit of additional braking when you come off the throttle. You can see that as a little swing, digital swing bar. It's not very aggressive. And as I said before, the screen, these piano physical buttons, you've got physical buttons for screen demist, aircon, and that kind of stuff, and then sort of more touch sensitive buttons behind that for sat nav and a phone, and this button here which brings you to the kind of the status of the EV part of the car, which tells you your miles per kilowatt hour on a little chart, which is a little bit basic. It's the same as the other cars, and your deferred charging time, which I like because I tend to charge in the middle of the night. The back of the E2008 is a pleasant place, but it is quite simple. The back of the seats are hard plastic and they're cut in quite deep for maximum knee room with a net on each side. Not a flat floor car because it's an adaptation of a piston car, but it's not a big transmission tunnel. 3 seats across the back, no armrest that comes down, so it's quite flat here in the middle. 2 USBs, which my kids adore because it's the summer holidays at the moment and they live on their devices. Damn them, Roblox, etc. And our car has come with the optional sunroof, which we have used loads. Please don't stop ordering cars with sunroofs. They're way better than aircon. You get to smell the world. You get to see wildlife and nature and appreciate it. But yeah, apart from that, there's not a great deal going on here apart from door pockets and pretty good visibility out. What I would say is also is all E2008s come as standard with tinted glass, whether you like it or whether you don't. It's weird, as soon as I got this car, and I've had it for 6 weeks to live with, you see so many of them. Not just electric ones, but piston E2008s. And I think there's a good reason for that. If you want a smallish family car, it seems to be the right proportions. And proportionally, I like it. My wife thinks it's a bit too bulbous, but I think she's being hard on it. Apparently this design language, these creases and things, are to reflect the surface of a rock. The suspension on the 2008 is pretty well judged. It is a firmer car than the Citroen E-C4, and it does not quite have that ride quality, that magic carpet of the C4, which is a stunning ride. So it's a little bit tauter than that. You've got your panhard. kind of rod torsion bar at the back, and then you've got your faux McPherson struts at the front. And as I said before, disc brakes all round. You can decide whether that's a better or a worse thing. I can't really tell whether that makes it a better braking system on an EV than something like an ID3, which has drums on the back. I really don't know. I find the brake pedal to be well judged, not too snatchy. This is not a quick car as such. It's a 9-second to 62 car. That means it's slower than something like the e-Niro or the Soul from Kia, and the Kona. And obviously it's slower than its E208 brother and the Corsa. I only drive it in sport when I'm like doing a short journey and I'm running late to collect the kids, or I'm on a back lane and I know I've got an absolute swell of charge left. Other than that, when I go on a long journey, motorways and stuff, I will almost always put this car in eco mode. As I said before, the entry-level E2008s come with 16-inch wheels. This GT's on 18s, but they still don't look massive because it's classed as a small SUV, although I think of it more as a crossover, to be honest. It's quite sit up and beg, and that's good for visibility and that kind of thing. And it's got a good shaped back end, which is practical for boot space. Roof spoiler, nice little haunches, and this lovely bar that's shared with the E208. And if you don't buy it in black, this really stands out, this mask. Quite a prominent bumper, which I like because I think if you have any sort of minor misdemeanors, this will be repaired really easily. But now let's look at the boot, because the boot is a pleasing place on this. I've found it to be very useful indeed, to the point where I've left loads of stuff in it. Rug, you've got to have a rug. Never know when you might need a picnic. Umbrella, because British summer. The Peugeot bag. This is a bag which actually comes with the car, magnetic lid, and this is just a 6-metre lead, and that can live under the floor. So this is what you're greeted with when you open the boot. Flat entry point, but that is a false floor. So this is a 434 litre boot. Bearing in mind the E-C4 was 380 litres. The Corsa is 309 litres, and to be fair to the Corsa, it is a smaller segment of car. The E208 is 311, and the Mokka-e, which is the slightly smaller version of this, but more SUV-like than the Corsa by Vauxhall, that's only 310 litres. So this has got the biggest boot in the cars that I've been living with. Charging. Port in this side, passenger side, the same as pretty much all the other Stellantis cars. 24 hours on a 3-pin plug, 7 hours on one of these, 7.5 hours on the 7 kilowatt box, and you can upgrade for just 300 quid to an onboard 11 kilowatt charger, which I think is money extremely well spent. It's been really interesting to live with these sorts of cars back to back in the real world, because that's when you see whether or not they've got warts or not. And I have to say, I've been massively impressed with what Stellantis offer. There's so much prejudice against French cars maybe not being particularly durable, well put together, and I have not found that that is the case. I'm a family man, so the verdict to this video diary, as it were, of these cars is my wife would go for the Citroen E-C4. The ride of that car is incredible. If you want sheer refinement and comfort and quiet, that is the car for you. With my family man head on in the real world, I think this is the car for us. If we weren't going for a family orientated one, I'd probably go for the E208, which is the Corsa's other brother. The great thing about this is it has a really, really useful boot space in combination with good kiddie space in the rear. I just enjoyed living with it, and I think looks-wise, it's pretty timeless. It's classless. So many people have admired this. Peugeot are on song at the moment. But I wouldn't order it in GT trim. I'd order it in Allure Premium, and I'd spec it with a sunroof and heated seats, which you can do. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this real-world review of these 3 cars. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to The Late Break Show, and I welcome your comments below, because I get emails all the time from people saying that they bought something because I said it was okay. What do you think of these? Let me know.